Welcome to this setting of Take 10. I'm going to be studying for a few segments on David. Now, there's been an inexhaustible supply of preaching material and thinking material coming from the life of David, who was that man after God's own heart. But in this, I want to take apart a study in relationships. Now, there's a study that we do in relationships that appear with success. So this is not going to be a series of things that help you to pick out what's going wrong in your life and the wrong relationships you have. This is about what happens as God begins to bless you and you begin to go toward the goal, and battles are not battles anymore. They are conquest heading to the total victory that God has outlined for you. A close friend visited his counselor after being involved in the typical stormy relationships that ministry, whether it be marketplace or church, often develops. And there was a following question that I took rare note of because it was posed after that counselor had listened well. Now, the person that he was interviewing was not having a war. In fact, he was having a great amount of success. And he told me, he said, I was shocked by the question. The counselor asked him, are you not having some problems with success? It seems that as success comes, you resist growing into the challenge of the relationships that appear as a result. And do you know that question from a wise counselor turned that whole thought process around? And then he began to think, every time I get things going, every time I get things into a height of victory and get into that place that God is, there's relationships that appear. Now, I've got the old relationships and all the people that were around and the warriors that were with me and the ones that warred against me and warred for, and I have all those relationships. But now, as victory comes, new relationships appear. So while pondering this question, I begin to see a pattern that develops in ministry. Now, it does not matter whether you're in marketplace ministry, which means you have a bivocational situation, or the ministry that you're doing is a corporation for the good of people and the things there, or you're actually in a church setting, in a church ministries. But new relationships always come into being as we wrestle with the mindsets of the relationships we had leading up to our promotion and our success. Did you know that our natural inclination is to resist personal growth and development of new and concise approach to managing those new relationships? We want to stick with what happened always before and what was good enough to get us there. And we make a lot of promises to people. Well, when I come into mine, or when we get there, or when we do that, I want to warn you about that, because it looks a whole lot different from the battle side than it does from the victory side. There comes a time in your walk with God and in your calling that holy thing that was put inside of you becomes to fruition. Now, it doesn't mean you don't have battles anymore, but they are protection battles. Battles to protect. Battles to bring a ring of power and authority around that which God has brought to you. And you guard it, just like we guard our nation. We do good sometimes, other times we don't, and we let all kinds of things come and destroy our wonderful nation. But to help us navigate the roadmap of successful relationships, I want to draw your attention to the life of David. So let's overview the mechanics of the man we look to as one who came from abject anonymity, rising to the top of influence. You know that story well. You've been around, and even if you just came to Christ last month, people tell you about David. Go read the Psalms, because, first of all, David was a man after God's own heart. It does not bode well that people poke at him, because he was a man. And that's the secret. He was a man who had problems like you and I. He had ups and downs. He had questions in his judgment. He had misjudgments. He had misgivings. He had times of faith, times of unbelief. But in his heart, God said, "You are a man after mine own heart." So this heart had to come into obedience. So how do you spell love for God? Well, I'll be very careful to tell you the way you spell love for God is Obedience. Obedience. We don't want to do that too much, but when you say you have a heart after God, you will constantly find yourself equivocating your desires and what God would do. You know, that's that old t-shirt. What would Jesus do? It really is the truth. It's a success formula. It's a success formula in your heart that you must, if you're going to be a person after God's own heart, and if you're going to go after the goals and opportunities that He has, you have to have obedience to His plan. And I'm here to tell you that the plan is not always something you readily agree with. Otherwise, why would you be dying to self? Why would you be killing the old man and resurrecting the new? And why would you go forward in that? Well, there is a success formula here. And the success formula is simply this: preparation plus opportunity equals success. We begin killing giants by staying faithful in the little things. And that's where we really find ourselves in the wars leading up to a victory. We find ourselves lost in the little things. It confuses us. We want the big picture. In fact, I laughed one day. I was with a friend of mine who had a very large church and had maybe three congregations at that time. And there was a new edict put out by the church administrator. Don't tell Pastor so-and-so anything negative. He is not to hear anything negative. And I thought to myself, how long is this going to last? Because the things that get you to success are the ability to kill giants, staying faithful in the little things. So you have all the little things going on. You have all the actions of the stress of life. You're working the little things. You're being obedient to the call. You're staying your heart right toward God. You know God's got a plan. You know He's going to bring it. And here come these giants that you literally have to kill that you've never killed before. You have to do things, make decisions, act ways, draw lines. You're not one of the people anymore. You've been drawn out. You now are a warrior of God, but you also have all the little things. What these little things brought David to was an aftermath of victory. You say, wow, it's going to be great. He's going to be powerful. He's now going to be, wow, whoa. No, listen, in 1 Samuel 17:55 through 18, verse 7. Now, we're not going to read it all, but if you'll go there, verse 5a just says, David was successful. He overcame. He did something no one else could do. He brought forth a power that was in him from all the little things he had done in life, which to you and I, we read his exploits as a shepherd, and we read his exploits in the wilderness, and they are big things that he was doing, but all of that were supported by little things he was doing. And all of a sudden now he's in the forefront of the army, he's on the battlefield, and he comes hauling up the hill with the sword of Goliath and the head of Goliath, the man who was a giant and had wrought fear. He and his family, and he had lots of brothers, but he had brought fear to the Israeli community for many, many years. And the decades of war was going back and forth. And all of a sudden, somebody found themselves successful. The head was marched through every street. The sword became a trophy. Everybody wanted to see it, touch it. How could he even handle such a sword? One of a man who was a giant. And at that time, David was promoted. That's in the back part of verse 5, just in the B part. And then the praise started. David was successful, he was promoted, and people started saying good things about him. Now, I know that we just got started in this, but I want you to understand that what you're doing is very important. And you never quit doing that, even after you're so successful. Like my friend, that didn't last very long, that he didn't hear any negative things, because they had a big hurricane and everything needed him. Every negative thing in the world needed him, because he was a giant slayer. He was the successful one. He was the one that God had promoted, and he was the one who had the favor among the people and among the sinner man in the street. God bless you. You go have a great day today. Remember, we're on our way up, and your relationships are about to change. I'll see you next time on Take 10.